So good afternoon to all the students present for this session. We are moving to the fourth unit of our journey in the strategic human resource management in internal context. So after having a brief of the various aspects of internationalization of organizations, we have understood the significance of culture, we have understood the significance of diversity. Now let us talk of this international human resource management practices, but with a different approach altogether that the organizations need to adopt for their survival only. Right? So here we are moving for today's class by having an insight into the conceptual framework of strategy. What is strategy? Then we'll think of this strategic human resource management, and we'll see how these strategic human resource management practices are being considered for international level of organizations itself. Right? So moving to the basic concept of these strategies itself, we have got an insight into it earlier also. But whenever we do talk of these strategies, it is more or less confined to the vision of the organization. So the organization's objectives, its core purpose of existence, its goals are to be understood first. And what are the policies, what are the plans that we do take into consideration for achievement of the goals? The strategy reveals the basic policies, plans of the organizations in its course of goal achievement. Strategy reveals the fact, the basic purpose of the existence of an organization, why the organizations do exist, what is the core purpose of their existence, what business they are in, and what kind of company they would like to be in future. Everything is defined in terms of the goals, and the way we reach to that state of existence is what we call it as a strategy. So this is one of the aspects of the strategy itself. But when we explore the other aspects of strategy, it says that it is, of course, the long-term goals of the organization, or the way we achieve the long-term goals of the organization. But how do we achieve that? What sort of course of action is allotted, adopted for achievement of those goals of the organization? Not only that, but at the same time, we need to understand one of the important aspects, that is the resource allocation of different sort of resources for achieving these goals of the organization. So at one point of time, we need to understand the basic policies, plans for achieving these goals, but at the other point, we need to understand the allocation of resources, the availability of resources, and how do we implement all of those kind of resources. The third aspect of the strategy takes the environmental factors, the significance that these environmental factors do have on the objectives of the organization, and how do we come out with a particular frame of reference in relation to all those resources who need to be committed, who need to be dedicated, loyal in terms of accomplishing the said objectives of the organization, considering the factors related to the environment, all those variables related to the environment. So that is why it is important to understand the environmental factors. So when we combine all of those things, we come out with the basic aspects of the strategic management process. What it says, it is the way we analyze or specify the organization's goals, its objectives, so as to say on a long term, its vision. Second, we need to think of the basic plans, the basic policies by which these goals of the organizations can be achieved. And third, we need to consider all those resources available with us, allocate those resources so that all those resources can fully be utilized in consideration with the environmental constraints for achievement of the goals of the organization. That is how we do come out with the basic concept of strategy itself. But when we move to the concept of human resource management in general are assumed to be comprising of four different functions: acquisition of human resources, the best possible utilization of human resources, motivating and inspiring the human resources to develop their level of loyalty and commitment, and retaining the human resources of the organization. So we say that the human resources are the process of acquisition, utilization, motivation, and retention on a long term to achieve the goals of the organization. But whenever we do come out with the concept of human resource management from the perspectives of the strategic management itself, we need to understand that the basic HR strategies and the organizational strategies need to go hand in hand. Basic HR strategies must be aligned with the organizational strategies. Right? Parallel, not that these organizational strategies will lead to HR strategies or HR strategies will lead to organizational strategies. They must go hand in hand. Right? So we need to understand the concept of human resource management from the perspectives of the organization or the strategies, right? So here we need to understand certain aspects where all those HR functions remain intact in the definition, but objective is to have that competitive advantage, right? How can we achieve that competitive advantage? Where we need to develop certain committed, skilled, capable workforce. Okay. But whenever we do talk of developing these, capabilities of the people, the skills of people itself, there some of the external factors like this cultural aspects are there, structural aspects are there, some of the personal aspects are also there. So what we need to understand is that somehow strategic human resource management practices do expand the traditional definition of human resource management practices into something which can add value to the organization in reference to the environmental constraints, in reference to all those elements related to the concerned person, concerned organization, and the environment itself. It's all about developing the capabilities. It's all about developing the skills and employing the employees for the said accomplishment of organization's goals. Now, understanding these two, like we have understood strategy, we have understood human resource management from a strategic perspective. Now, let us combine these two things to derive the exact meaning of strategic human resource management. Right? So, what we need to understand is that strategic human resource management is a process whereby we are talking of some of the strategies, some of the systems are to be implemented for accomplishment of the mission of the organization, the success of the firms, right? But at the same time, we need to think of the satisfaction of the stakeholders, internal stakeholders, particularly the employees of the organization and other stakeholders associated with the organization. So what sort of policies, plans that we develop in relation to the human resources so that the organizations can actually accomplish the goals by satisfying the stakeholders is what is the core of this strategic HRM. Right? Strategic HRM is a process whereby we think of the basic ways of improving the competitive advantage, improving the competitive performances of the organization. And how we can do that? We can do that by utilizing our human resources to the best way. So best possible utilization of human resources is what is the core of this strategic HR function. We are thinking of this strategic HR function or strategic HRM as, you know, as a process of achieving the overall organization's goals. But once we need to understand, here the focus is on the accomplishment of the organization's goals, but the focus is on human resources. We are talking of the coordination and collaboration among all such HR programs, all such policies, plans, practices related to the human resources of the organization. We should also be concerned for the basic pattern, the way of defining the goal and how we can accomplish, or the process. So accomplishment of goal or definition of defining the goal is one part. The process by which we can accomplish that goal is the other part. So both things are to be taken together. Right? So how it is understood is a distinctive approach, right? Where we manage people who can have that competitive advantage, right? By enhancing their skill, knowledge, abilities, which will lead to a committed, capable workforce. So, from a layman's perspective, if I do see that strategic human resource management practices focuses on the enhancement of the skill, knowledge, capabilities of the people, enhancement of the abilities of the people, so that people can be dedicated, committed, loyal to the organization, whereby all those people can contribute for the competitive advantage of the organization. So taking all of these things together, if we do define the strategic human resource management from an international perspective, as in our previous classes we have understood that international human resource management is conceptually same as domestic human resource management practices. So concept remaining same, the context changes. Concept remaining same, the context changes, because human resource management practices are significantly affected by different countries, legal systems, political systems, cultural systems, value systems. When the same concept is applicable in different countries, the concept gets modified. So we say that it is contextual in nature. So human resource management practices being considered in different organizations as to include all those necessary changes, right, arising out of the contextual factors. So here, like we understood that P. Morgan's model is a process of acquiring, utilizing and allocating human resources. And what we do it in the parent country, the host country and the third country, where we deal with the parent country nationals, host country nationals and third country nationals. That is why, right? So strategic level of human resource management practices in international organizations, they focus on different sort of issues which may arise out of the employment process, contextual processes, necessary functional adaptations to those kind of processes, and we are talking of the policies and practices. Okay. Policies and practices, all of those things, issues, functions, policies and practices are significantly different, because we do talk of this multinational enterprises, MNCs. which do operate in different contextual environment. So it is the way in which these MNCs do have their international concern and the goals of the organization, all of those things to be taken together as a concern of strategic international human resource management practices. So we do come out with some of the basic aspects which remains same conceptually but changes contextually. That is what we need to understand. So different countries, we need to have a different approach in terms of human resource management practices. That is what we need to take into consideration. So let us understand, why it is significant, because there are linkages in terms of business strategies, in terms of HR strategies itself, right? So whenever we to talk of this internationalization process of the organizations, most of the organizations, they do come out with certain strategies which is to promote their performances, or which is to have that competitive advantage over their competitors at international level itself. So three broad strategies are being considered by the organizations. One is cost leadership. We are talking of differentiation. We are talking of the focus. Whenever we are talking of this cost leadership, the entire thrust of the organization is to cut the cost, reduce the cost, lower the prices, right? So that the industry can capture a bigger market. The niche will be bigger, right? Because these sort of organizations, these sort of strategies, cost leadership strategies, assume that a small change in the price will significantly impact the customer's demand. Customers are more sensitive towards price, okay? Because most of the time, these products and services provided by different organizations, or whenever we talk of this products and services by different categories itself, there is no such distinguishable differences. Customers do not find such kind of difference. So within a comparative range, if I can be a cost-effective leader in the market, right? Cost-sensitive leader in the market, then definitely I'll have a bigger market niche. I'll have a better market niche, right? So that is why, organization's thrust is to reduce cost. So if the organization's thrust is to reduce cost, what would be the necessary HR strategies? I cannot go with the traditional HR practices over there, right? So my thrust would focus more on the utilization of human resources, best possible utilization of human resources, which will reduce the cost, which will reduce the wastages, right? My thrust is to ensure that all the human resource strategies, they focus on short-term gains, right? That is completely based on the results, outcomes of the entire process. Efficiency is highly prioritized. Job specializations are specific, and there are explicit job descriptions. Each and every member is expected to contribute what is being expected, right? So here you'll see that there are, because the objective is reduction of cost, there are leisure incentives, right? Hierarchical pay is promoted over there. There are limited training facilities, training cost is reduced, narrow career path is there, limited employment security is there, because unless and until you do come out with your productivity, then you do not have a chance of surviving there, right? And sometimes these organizations do come out with different sort of retrenchment policies, right? Like FIFO, LIFO, we do talk of all of those kind of retrenchment policies to reduce their manpower, to save cost. Yeah. All of those things leads to specific and limited participation of workers. So, comparatively, these HR strategies lead to the basic objective of achieving this cost leadership approach. We do talk of the second one, differentiation. So here, unlike this cost leadership, here the organization's focus is not on the cost, but the organization's focus is to produce certain features or certain distinguishing features of their products and services, which would like to gain the competitive advantage, right? Attempting to perform in a better way in a competition, in a competitive zone itself, right? At least they would like to, bring that competitive advantage over their competitors with superior product quality, superior service quality itself. The price is not a matter. Here, the farm actually charges certain premium amount for its products and services because the products and services are unique, extraordinary, something new, innovative, right? So all of those things do draw the attention of the customers. So differentiation strategy focuses on drawing the customer's loyalty towards the product. Just sometimes we do come out with this, brand loyalty, employer loyalty. We do talk about product loyalty also. So these are the things which makes these customers more loyal. But how this objective of differentiation can be achieved, what sort of necessary HR strategies should be incorporated, that has to be understood. Okay? So here, employees need to have a broad career path. Plenty of opportunities of growth and development are there. Organizations keeps on investing in training program. There, equal and fair pay, many incentives for this creativity is also there. Long-term performance measures are there. External recruitment, hiring people who bring new ideas, all of those things are promoted. High employee participation is there and employment security is there. So here the thrust is on the insertion of new generation employees in the organization who can really overcome that barrier of orthodox managerial practices. New thought processes, new ideas should be generated. I need to overcome that status quo. That is what. I need to come out with a unique way of defining my product and service. The third strategy is focus strategy. Here, market doesn't need a uniform strategy. You need to understand one thing, that different segments of the market, they do attempt to satisfy different groups of people. So different groups of people, different expectations. What I need to do is to provide them a customized solution for a particular group of people. I cannot have a common product for all. So product specification has to be there. Here, the firm can, impose a premium price for its services, but at the same time, this market segments can be overlooked as our product and services cannot be generalized. Right? Necessary HR strategies that we need to take into consideration, like equal and fair pay with many incentives for retaining those target groups itself. When I to think of hiring people only from the target market because they do have more acquaintance with the customers over there. Broad career paths with extensive training is what that is characterized over here. High employee participation is there and employee security is there, but not to that extent as of the differentiation strategy. So different strategies of the business requires subsequent strategies in the HR, and both of these things, they go hand in hand, go together. That is what we need to understand. But whenever we talk of this strategic international human resource management practices, right, we come out with a concept of strategic fit. What it says that this organizational competencies, like the internal resources, internal skills of the organization, should properly match with the opportunities available in the international market. So there has to be a best fit approach. Whatever resources I do have, and that resources need to have a perfect match to the external or to the operations available in the international context itself. So we do come out with a particular framework of reference, what we call it as integrative contingency framework. Okay. So what this integrative contingency framework says? Now here you come out with the different policies and strategies. First, to respond to the local needs, right? And sometimes these cultures where these local units can be clubbed together, can be integrated to more extensive organizational systems. Okay. So this is what that is explored, like that is being described in three different approaches. The first approach is your explorative approach, what we call it as the ethnocentric approach itself. Okay. So here in this ethnocentric approach or explorative approach, the thrust is on the parent country organization. The thrust is on the parent country's delegation to the subsidiaries. So all of these parent countries, strategies, policies, plans, rules, regulations, everything is transferred to the subsidiary in the foreign location. So that is being adopted with minimum or no changes. Okay. So parent organization to the subsidiary with no changes. We are talking of a adaptive strategy, polycentric strategy, where we do talk of the basic requirement of the local settings are huge. When there's a huge difference in terms of the products and service requirements, there's a huge difference in terms of the customers' taste and preferences or cultural norms, we need to go for this polycentric approach. But this polycentric approach says we need to develop this subsidiaries with this local settings and local conditions. Local settings and local conditions. So subsidiaries are the people who can actually, subsidiaries can recruit people from the local area itself. Okay? And all of those rules, regulations, policies, plans are to be customized according to the needs of the local area. We do have an integrative framework also, what we call it as a geocentric framework. Geocentric framework says neither I am dependent on the People of the parent country as like an explorative ethnocentric approach, nor I am dependent on the people of the host country as of adaptive and polycentric approach, but anyone, anyone who in true sense is a global manager is a person I need for my organizations. So integrative or geocentric strategy says, I need to think of any best practice, maybe from the parent country or host country or any third country. But what I assume best for my organization, that is what I'll take into consideration. Okay. So may it be the best fit, may it be the integrative contingency approach, but the objective is I need to develop certain processes by which these organizations can accomplish their goals with the proper allocation of resources, etc. Certain other strategical aspects that we need to consider from the perspectives of internationalization processes, like we're talking of this resource dependency theory. What it says, there is a frequent exchange of resources from the host country, from the parent country to the host country itself, right? So organizations, mostly the subsidiaries of the host country, they do rely more upon the progression of valuable resources itself. So everything is dependent on the availability of resources. To what extent these resources are abundantly available, or to what extent there is a scarcity of resources. And it is assumed that more is the scarcity of resource, more power the entity that controls. You're talking of, valuable resources are to be ensured availability at time. That is what is the thing. The resource-based view of the farm, it says that organizations are more dependent on both the tangible and intangible resources. Where we to talk of the basic resources like the technologies, machineries, raw materials are tangible in nature. We do deal with human beings as a resource which are intangible in nature. We do talk of this organizational approach which views that organizations must take the profit from the worldwide labor forces. But what is required is we need to acquire proper human resources and we need to make the best possible utilization of those resources by educating them, by training them itself. So the recruitment is based on the practice of taking new skills to the organization itself. So they reconfigure their skills to add more and more value to the organization, right? And in the process, right, they do come out with new assets being uncovered for the business. Talk about knowledge-based view of the farm. And when we do talk of this organizational learning theory, we understand that learning is a continuous process. Anything that doesn't bring a change in the behavior, which is somehow rather permanent in nature, is not a part of learning. So whenever we do talk of these learning theories being applied on organizations, we say this knowledge management has to be considered. Transfer of knowledge should be there as a part of the process. Okay. So we'll see that what sort of knowledges are available and how these knowledges can be transferred from one person to the other. Okay. The last one says it's a relational and social capital theory. What What it says that everything, the kind of relationship that the parent country does have with the subsidiary to the host country is more or less institutionalized, right? May it be based on actual relationships or virtual relationships, doesn't make a difference, right? But it must be institutionalized, right? So there has to be mutual acceptance and recognition. Mutual acceptance and recognition is what that says, right? However, whenever we talk of this entire process of incorporating these organizations with the strategic level of practices in international level, right? Here we do come out with the basic architecture. Now, what human resources do? Human resources develop the capabilities of the people, skills of the people, loyalty of the people, commitment of the people, whereby people can contribute in any adverse situations, right? So whenever we talk of this from the perspectives of international organizations, here you can see that it comes out with the interactions that people do have. Interactions, in a sense, different people are being having a linkage with the other in the organization from 4 different perspectives. There is a structural relationships, there may be procedural relationships, there should be incentives and controls, and culture as a significant influencer to the people itself. So all of these things are linked together. So when I do talk of strategic level of human resource management practices for any international organization, I cannot ignore any of these factors. All of these factors to be taken into consideration. I need to understand that, right? So the basic architecture of the organization's strategic IHRM focuses on the structure, process, incentives and controls, culture, which ultimately guide the people of the organization, right? However, when we talk of the basic role of human resources in shaping the organization, here you can find it out different sort of HR practices for the organizations, right? Role of human resources when we talk about. Look, on the left-hand side, we can see that there is exogenous factors, the external factors, which do have a significant impact. So the industry characteristics, this varies from organization to organization, from country to country based on the socio-economic practices. Domestic and regional characteristics. What sort of differences you to find out between this domestic level of organization and with the regional level, right? That is what we need to take into consideration. Endogenous factors are the factors sorry, like which are internal to the organization, right? We do talk of the MNC structure, the competitive strategy that the MNC does have, how these resources are endowed in the MNC's practices, all of those. So environmental constant is what that we need to take into consideration first, right? Environmental constant, here you can see, right, are directly or indirectly impacting the MNC's strategic IHRM role. So external factors may contribute, or internal factors are affected by different sort of strategic choices that these organizations do have. Sorry. And as if we have understood the corporate strategy, like whether these organizations do go for adaptive style or explorative style or integrative style, their internal processes do affect the organizations. Right? And the MNC's strategic IHRM role is the inter-subsidiary role, the sorry, the local responsiveness and the strategic alignment with the global learning itself. So IHRM practices, policies are to be defined. But here you need to understand one thing, that the pressure and the goals of the MNCs are different. Here we to come out with this profitability, the coordination and integration, disperse and interdependence assets, local responsiveness, differentiated products, innovation, sharing knowledge, all of those things are the factors which may be there because of this external factor. So there is a linkage, these external factors and the overall strategies of the organizations does have. So that linkage is established in terms of the collaborations, coordinations between the different HR strategies and the subsequent HR policies, plans, rules, regulations in international organizations. That is what we need to understand. So the thing is that we need to confine our thought to all those factors responsible for the human resource architecture at international organizations. The proper planning has to be there. Sorry. Proper planning has to be there. We do talk of cultural adaptation. Cultural adaptation to different sort of work designs. All of those things can be there. Regulatory influence on work design. Regulatory influence, we do say that different international organizations do have different sort of rules, regulations, laws, enactments, and all of those things are to be taken into consideration. We are talking of labor market labels, labor market skills available, right? Labor population skills available, and the kind of technology or infrastructure available for international organizations. All of those things to be taken into consideration. These are the things which makes this organizational practices more significant in nature. But understanding these perspectives of strategy is more based on two dimensions. Here we need to take into consideration two things: whether we value the outcomes or we value the process. Where the value is on outcomes of the organization, the entire strategy focuses on the core profit of the organization. Maybe different organizational practices will come out with profit as one of the goals. At the same time, there may be multiple goals associated with that. But whenever we think of this process part, we do come out with the basic plans, policies, structures of the organization to be streamlined. And the assumption is that if the process is taken care of, the end result will automatically be achieved. That is the core aspect of these organizations. Based on these two dimensions, all those organizational strategies are classified into 4 categories. There may be classical, evolutionary, or maybe processual or systematic. Classical, evolutionary, processual, and systematic. Where we do talk of this classical approach, a deliberate approach of maximizing the profit is there. Deliberate approach is there. So here, the senior managers, they do make a systematic evaluation of the environment, they do make a systematic assessment of the environment, and they do come out with the different sort of strategies so that the organizations can cope with the changes or demands of the society to accomplish profit. So analyzing environmental factors and taking necessary course of actions on the basis of that. The thrust is on the outcomes. Whenever we talk of evolutionary approach, of course, takes profit maximization as one of the core aspect. But here, the process is not deliberate. As if in classical approach, process is deliberate. Profit maximization is what that we need to take into consideration. But in evolutionary approach, the process is not deliberate. So here, more significant role is on the planning by the managers. When we talk of this processual roles, here the objective is focusing on the individuals and the group's interest. So the thrust is on negotiations, thrust is on discussions, thrust is on different sort of compromises that we need to take into consideration in due course of time. A systematic approach is a deliberate approach, but a pluralistic approach. What it says that this structural context plays a significant role in the organization, shaping the strategies of the organization. That is what we need to take into consideration. Right? So, organizations, in terms of their approach to accomplish the goals or to give a thrust to the process part, comes out with different sort of strategic initiatives. But Bartlett and Ghoshal, in their study, they have identified that the strategic level of organizations, strategic practices related to the international organizations, should take three different aspects into consideration. One is your local differentiations, right? So organizations operating in different national cultures must give a thrust on the local differences that these organizations should pass through. So objective is you must align the strategic intent of the organization in line with the values and attitude of the host country. We are talking of global integration. Global integration is, even if we do talk of this local market differences, but global integration says you need to cater to specific markets. So there has to be some sort of practices which can be taken as uniform from the perspectives of the organization. It would be same as to enhance the economies of scale. It would be to have that competitive advantage. So some sort of uniform practices, some sort of basic practices are to be taken into consideration. And third is the worldwide innovation itself. Worldwide innovations is the entire world market is changing drastically. There's a rapid change, maybe in terms of the customer states and preferences, maybe in terms of the growth of science and development, maybe in terms of the technological advancements, maybe in terms of the rules and regulations, maybe in terms of the political stability or instability. But we witness a faster changing approach. Nowadays, we need to be highly responsive to that. So somewhere rather, we are talking of the agility in terms of our human resource management practices, the strategies itself. So there has to be, unless and until I do say that, this rapidly changing environment is adapted with. right? And what is the biggest challenge? I do have shortage of time. I don't have plenty of time to renovate my operations. I have to provide a quick solution to that. That is what we need to understand, right? So based on that, as if we have discussed it earlier also, there are four different level of strategies that these organizations do follow, right? We have to talk of one of the multinational strategies of the organization, right? There is, local responsiveness is high. Here you can see. So we understand for this multinational firms, there is a minimal direction from the headquarters, right? So multinationals take these subsidiaries as independent units, even if it reports to the headquarter office itself from the parent country, but these subsidiaries do operate as an independent unit with loose operational control from the headquarter itself. Decision making process is completely decentralized to the local units, right? So maybe this financial model where this capital is invested from the parent country itself, dividends are paid for that. But here we need to understand one thing, that the basic approach, these multinational strategies are the strategies which are based on this polycentric approach, right? So subsidiaries are considered as independent units. They do have all the freedom to formulate their strategies related to products and services, not necessarily that whatever products and services strategies they do have in the headquarter itself will be implemented. No, changes can be brought. Whenever we talk of this global firms, right? Here you can see this global efficiency is high, but local responsiveness is low. As I said, that global efficiencies are to adapt some sort of strategies uniform across cultures. This strategy may be there because nowadays we do see there are reductions in the transportation cost, in the communication cost itself. Sometimes we also think of this trade barriers. We do talk of this trade regulations are being relaxed. So this sort of practices leads to the economies of scale, larger quantities, right? Mass presence over there. That is what we need to understand, right? So whenever we do talk of this approach, global approach, there we do say sometimes organizations do keep a replication of their business in multiple nationalities. So it is based on the ethnocentric approach, we can say, right? This is seen just as a cultural extension of the parent country. That is what. Most of the rules, regulations, policies, plans, guidelines, strategies are driven in the parent country itself, but are customized considering the local culture. Nothing other than that. But practices are uniform. When we talk of this international firms, right? But this global efficiency is low, local efficiency, local responsiveness is also low. So here you can say this is a hybrid blend of this polycentric to ethnocentric approach. That means what? Here, the parent country's knowledge or expertise are utilized in the foreign market. So there is a transfer of knowledge. That is what, how it happens, we'll see next, right? Transnational organizations, they are integrated network of organizations, right? So geocentric. So really, these transnational organizations are, in true sense, are the geocentric approach. So no limitations to the parent countries, no limitations to the host countries. I need to hire best. That is what we need to take into consideration and to hire the best. Okay? So when I'm going to talk of this sort of approaches where either this parent countries expertise experiences are transferred to the local subsidiaries in the host country itself, or maybe in terms of the geocentric approach where I do talk of learning from different sort of cultures, traditions, or different sort of knowledge which has to be transferred from one person to the other or one country to the other. Right? So we need to take into consideration that this knowledge transfer is possible with a categorization of this knowledge which takes the explicit knowledge and the tacit knowledge. Explicit knowledge is a knowledge which can be codified, which can be written down, which can be expressed, communicated, right? It can be shared in form of complex data, manuals, books, periodical journals, everything. But tacit knowledge is a knowledge which is more implicit in knowledge, a kind of knowledge that is, it's not feasible, it's not expressible, so may not be possible to express it in terms of written words or documents or something like that. Okay? So when we talk of this explicit knowledge which is easy to communicate, easy to share, this implicit knowledge or this tacit knowledge is more difficult to share. And share it easily. It's more difficult to communicate. Right? This explicit knowledge consists of know-hows or this learned skills itself. But this tacit knowledge comes from personal experiences. So as to say, this explicit knowledge is what I can gain because of my association with my books or whatever I do read or whatever I do, see or do that, I can gain that kind of knowledge. But tacit knowledge is something which can only be gained from the experiences, right? Which organizations can leverage it, right? So organizations can really promote this explicit knowledge. They can collect it, store it, communicate it. So all of those things. But widespread management of this tacit knowledge is still elusive because experiences of the people, are very difficult to. What is required over here is to understand that most of the knowledge are tacit, which are related to the concerned individuals, right, are tacit in nature. So I need to find out a way by which this tacit knowledge can be transferred. So when it comes to the development of leadership abilities, development of this human resources or preparing these human resources for international assignment, whenever we do talk of their pre-departure training or the on-job training kind of thing, all of those things require to experience those or to have those tacit knowledge experienced by other people. So employee assistance programs, employee mentoring programs can also help in these kind of things. So there has to be one-to-one guidance from certain other people who had prior experience of that international assignment. They can add more value to the organizational practices itself. So let us conclude this session with some of the aspects like what are the basic qualities required for these leaders for any international assignment. Like these international assignments can really be handled by the people who can think, lead, and act according to global perceptions, who do not confine themselves to particular cultures, strategies, right? Managers do have global mindset, not confining themselves to local things, right? And they act diversely because their behavioral patterns, social practices, they can adapt to any kind of situations, right? These managers are the people who can really understand the different verbal and non-verbal clues that these organizations do have, right? So what we can say is that international human resource management practices truly need global leaders, right? Who can this transfer this human resources or HR practices from domestic level of territory to the international level of organizations with an addition of the local culture, values, traditions, customs. So we can pay the respect to the local culture itself. Right? So strategic international HRM deals with all HR practices in a contextual format. So that is the end of this particular session. So thank you very much. And we'll once again come back to learn more about these international HR practices from different verticals of HR in block 2. Thank you very much.